everybody, my name is Kyle3639. Welcome back to another video. Today, in this one, it's going to be another top 5 video. In this one, it's going to be the top 5 meta decks for the October 2021 format post ban list. Now, technically, we're not even in this format yet, which gets a couple questions raised. Why am I making this video if the format's not even legal yet and no tournaments have happened under this ban list yet? Well, there's a good answer to that. It's because this last ban list didn't change jack shit, really. I mean, besides like a limitation to one card, it really didn't change much. All the meta decks that were in the last format are most likely going to be the meta decks of this format. So yeah, I'm going to be covering my top 5 cards, or top 5 decks in this format. But first, we're going to be covering the meta cards, which are cards I think will dominate the meta just by themselves. Then we'll be covering honorable mention decks, and then we'll actually get into the top 5 itself. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting off with our meta cards, and our first one here is going to be Cross Out Designator. Now, technically, this card is not out yet, as it will be released in the tins this upcoming Friday, but I still wanted to include Cross Out Designator because, holy shit, this thing is fucking good. It's going to be played in probably nearly every deck because of how good this card is. If you don't know what Cross Out does, it's declare one card name, banish one card with that name from your deck, and if you do, until the end of this turn, the effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on field of the cards with the same original name. So basically, this became Called by the Grave, but maybe a little better because you can get other cards besides, stuff in Graveyard. Called by the Grave is currently limited to 1, and Cross Out, I would think, is a better version of Called by the Grave. This card is absolutely fucking ridiculous. It changes how you have to deck build, because not only was 1, you have to play Cross Out Designator, 2, you need to play cards that you want to stop with Cross Out that maybe doesn't even really go with your deck, but you want to play it anyways, so you have that out just in case you draw the Cross Out and stuff like that. That's why this card is meta warping in a way. A lot of people are calling it that. A lot of the combo decks in today's format are going to get an advantage off Cross Out Designator because this gets a way to play around hand traps and stuff like that. Then people will switch up their side decks as well because maybe they want to side in cards that their opponent might side in for their deck, so they have Cross Out on the ready to stop those side cards as well. Cross Out just can basically stop any card in the game that's not named like a counter trap 3 unless you banish the counter trap 3 first. But yeah, this card is very fucking ridiculous. As long as you have the card in your deck, you can stop any card in the game. So yeah, this is my first meta card because holy shit, this is going to be an absolutely great card once it comes out. It's not released yet, but it will be released by the end of this weekend once we get into the new format. Cross Out Designator, absolutely fucking ridiculous. Yeah, makes sense that it is one of our meta cards. Our next meta card up is Zeus, and oh boy, this card is really, really powerful. So powerful they actually had to ban 2 cards just to prevent it, a deck from going off with it. And that's basically Zodiac Barrage and Zodiac Deriding, because basically what it did with Zeus is you would be able to get to 6 materials with it. Even though they did that, they had to ban 2 cards just to prevent Zeus from, doing its shenanigans and stuff like that, and an indirect hit to Tribe Gauge as well. Zeus is still one of the most powerful cards in today's current format, which I personally like, because I don't know, if Zeus for me seems really fun to play against and stuff like that. I understand why a lot of people might hate playing against it, but I like this card very, very good. If your deck can make an XYZ, or either plays an XYZ or can make an XYZ monster, you're most likely playing Zeus, because Zeus is just that powerful. Something like Drytron that usually don't make XYZs except for their Mew Beta plays Zeus because they know how powerful Zeus can be, and they can access Zeus basically because they play Mew Beta Fafnir. Same thing with Virtual. They usually go into Synchros, but they also do have the XYZ packages in their extra deck. They also play Zeus because they have the XYZ stuff in their extra deck. If you just have XYZs, Zeus is a perfect contender for you because Zeus is just an absolutely powerful card. Got reprinted, so it's going to be a little bit more cheaper than it used to be because now it's an ultra rare in the tins when it used to be a secret rare and be expensive as shit. But now it's an ultra rare, got its reprint. Probably going to be cheaper than it used to be, so more affordable to pick up and stuff like that. So this card's going to be running around in the format without a doubt. It makes sense. Basically, non-once return, sending everything from the field to the graveyard is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, this makes sense why this card is currently being played as much as it is, because this is a powerful card. But yep, let's get into the next meta card. Our next meta card here is Verte slash Dragoon. Basically what I'm saying is the Dragoon engine kind of thing. Yeah, this engine went unhit for some reason in the ban list, which doesn't make sense to me, because you have the new Dragoon coming out in Burst of Destiny, which just, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, both cards are very powerful in its own right. Dragoon just being a non-targeting, non-destruction card that you can destroy your opponent's card, inflict damage, has the negate, has the protection, absolutely bonkers card. And then Verte Anaconda to cheat it out, make combo decks be able to combo off, cheat it out during their last play of their turn. Verte, absolutely ridiculous card. Now, I thought they were going to hit Verte. They clearly didn't. Maybe one of these will get reprinted in the Gold Set. I think a lot of people are expecting that in El Dorado, that one of this is going to get reprinted. I think both are going to get reprinted because they both need a reprint. But a lot of people are speculating one. This engine is still fucking powerful as shit. Verte gets a boost because it can not only send Red Eyes Fusion, it can still send like stuff like Super Poly as well, which is ridiculous in its own right. And then they can also send the Fusion Destiny once Burst of Destiny comes out to send the new to get the new Dragoon out and stuff like that. So Verte honestly is a very powerful card in and of itself. So I decided to put both cards onto the meta cards because both cards are powerful in its own right. Now, we won't see the Burst of Destiny stuff until next month. That's why I'm not going to be really covering the Burst of Destiny stuff in this video. Maybe in a month I'll cover it and stuff like that. But yeah, I wanted to put this in the meta cards because absolutely this engine is still powerful. Left untouched, no shit, this thing is going to be still powerful. And then for our final but very powerful meta card is Pot of Prosperity. Oh boy, this card is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Cannot lie. It's a Pot of Duality on steroids because you can send 6 cards if you banish 6, and then you still get the special summon for the rest of the turn and stuff like that. This card is absolutely bonkers. $100 price tag, which honestly I'm not surprised by. So many meta decks can play this card. Even if you go into your extra deck a lot, you're most likely playing Pot of Prosperity because that's just how powerful Pot of Prosperity. Unless you're like in for Noble Knights where your extra deck is basically your second hand, you're playing Pot of Prosperity because this card is absolutely ridiculous, can help you get into your starters and stuff like that. Makes sense why this card is being played so much. It's not going to get reprinted anytime soon, so like the $100 price tag is going to stick because this card is not getting reprinted anytime soon because it only came out like 6 months ago. That's honestly surprising that this card has only been out for not that long and it's making such an impact on the game. It makes sense. Its effect is so fucking powerful. If you're not really playing this, you're either playing a deck that can't really use it or you're I'm not going to try to be mean about this, but you're just, you don't have the money to get this card. Which, again, makes sense. I wouldn't spend $100 on Pot of Prosperity if I was some regular human being. But I'm addicted to Yu-Gi-Oh! So, of course, I own a playset of this fucking card. But I bought it at 80, not 100. So, yeah, this is going to be our last meta card. So, without further ado, let's get into the honorable mentions. Starting off our honorable mention list is Outledge. And this hurts me to put it where it's at, because I feel like this deck is really underrated right now. I know a lot of people don't like it because, I don't know why people dislike this deck. I understand why, because the powerful decks in the meta can put up, can very easily beat this deck. But honestly, man, it hurts me to put it here because, again, if you don't know, Outledge is my main deck. The zombie Outledge version of the deck is my main deck, and it hurts me to put it here, but I understand why it's in the honorable mentions. The most popular variant of Outledge is no longer playable, which was the Zodiac Outledge variant, because Tanky is limited, Barrage is banned, and Derida is banned. There's really no point in playing the Zodiac Outledge variant anymore, because honestly, it's been hit way too much. A lot of people are playing the stun version of Outledge, which is like alright, because you're playing a shit ton of traps and it's preventing your opponent from playing the game. But it's like, whatever. Especially if you play hand traps in Outledge, you like crossouts coming out. Again, I still feel like Zombie Outledge is a very underrated deck because Zombie World can absolutely fuck a lot of decks. Same thing with Rivalry. I feel like a lot of people are giving not enough credit to Zombie Outledge right now. If you watch my channel, you'll know how powerful Zombie Outledge is. But I can understand why this is on the honorable mention list. So, yeah, unfortunate to see here, but I do see why Outledge is in the honorable mention list. Next thing up on the honorable mention list is Sky Striker, and you just remember when everyone was freaking out about Engage coming back to 1, myself included, by the way. Everyone was freaking about Engage, how Sky Striker was just going to dominate the format and stuff like that. they haven't really been doing so, have they? They've been like more of just like a tier 2 deck. Haven't been really, they can't really compete with like Drytron or, Tri-Big and stuff like that. It's very hard, especially since, hand traps really don't do anything anymore, especially with Crossout coming out. Oh, like hand traps are powerful, but Crossout's coming out now, so it makes it less effective. Again, a lot of people have found ways to stop Striker in its tracks and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a very honorable mention list now. A lot of people were thinking it was going to take over the format. That's no longer the case. I think a lot of people now agree that Engage coming to 1 is a perfectly fine enough choice. Yeah, Sky Striker hasn't really been doing anything as of note, so this makes sense to be on the honorable mention list. Next thing up on the honorable mention list is Dinos. Now, a lot of people have written this deck off because Mist was limited to 1, but I still feel like this deck can still pretty much set up a very ridiculous board, especially with Archosaur now being reprinted, which makes Dinos a lot more affordable to play. Mist is at 1, sure, but they still get that 1 Mist, which they can search in the deck and then play during their turn. Set up a really good board, I would think. I feel like this deck can still do very good things. I know Mist to 1 very much hurts this deck because they really don't have a turn. They can't, miss during an opponent's turn to prevent their dinos from being unaffected by shit. But I feel like this deck is still very powerful, especially with the Scrap Rat variant of this deck. I feel like this deck is still very powerful with Archosaur now being reprinted. It can be more affordable now as well, but I can see why it's not being played much. Mist is at 1. Very really does hurt the deck. So yeah, I think it's an honorable mention for now, but I feel like a lot of people might give this deck another run with Archosaur being reprinted and stuff like that, because the Scrap Rare variant is still very fucking powerful. So there's that. Next thing up is Salamangreat. Now, the unbanning of Mirage Deli has done a lot of things for this deck. It gives them the access to a rank 3. They can special summon something like Gazelle or a Jack Jaguar from deck. This deck is a very good tier 2 to 1.5 deck. A very powerful control deck. They can play a shit ton of hand traps because they do have a 1-card starter, since they have a Link 1 in the deck, so that makes them very able to go off and stuff like that. This is a very powerful control deck that, controls the board their turn 1, then turn 2 start comboing off, trying to get the OTK going. I feel like this deck is very powerful. I can see why it has troubles competing with the top 5 right now, but it's a very good tier 1.5 kind of thing. For me, Salamangreat is a very powerful deck. They have Roar and they have Rage that are basically searchable thanks to Gazelle and stuff like that. Yeah, Mirage Dahlia has done a lot for this deck. I'm happy to see that card back, by the way, but this deck is very powerful, but it's not good enough to make the top 5. And then our last honorable mention is Dragon League. Holy shit. They got, like, murdered on the last ban list, didn't they? And they're still doing fucking good. Like, Striker, they banned LP and they limit Striker, and this deck is still popping off. They're still getting the combo boards and stuff like that. It makes sense because Dragon is the most supported deck in the format. So, yeah, it makes sense that Dragon League is still, very powerful as it is. There is still some weaknesses to it. Its end board is not as powerful as it used to be. But it can still end up on a very decent board, even with Striker at 1, even with LP ban, because they still have, like, Chaos Base. They still have, the light and dark dragons. I forget their names. I'm blanking on their names right now. They have Rocket Tracer. They have fucking Quick Launch at 3 and shit. They still have Link 1s in the deck. They still have fucking Pisty for fuck's sakes, which is still very good. They have Red Eyes Metal Dragon and stuff like that. There's a lot of good things with this deck right now. It's very close to being the top 5 right now, especially in some people's opinions. It might be the top 5 because a deck did get hit in the ban list that might knock it down a peg. But Dragon League is still very powerful, nearly making the top 5 for me, but it's just under. This is number 6, let's consider. But Dragon League, very powerful deck, even with Striker Dragon Limited, even with LB ban. This deck is still very good, combos off, gets into a very good end board, which I like to see. Dragon League is technically number 6, but our last honorable mention. So without further ado, let's get into our top 5, shall we? Coming in at number 5 for me is Prank Kids. Now, a lot of people might write this deck off because the Link 1 was now limited and stuff like that. But for me, they still have Doodle Doo at 3, you know what I mean? They still have Doodle Doo. They still have all their powerful cards and stuff. I know the Link 1 is now limited, and if you do end up negating the Prank Kids Link 1 and stuff like that, their combo with the Link 1s, then their turn 3 and turn 5 become way weaker in comparison. But you also have to remember they hard play polymerization, and they also have their quick play fusion spell. I forget what it's like. It starts with an L, doesn't it? I'm blanking on the name right now. I still feel like this deck is still very powerful, even with the Link 1 at 1. I feel like this deck will find a way to keep competing. I know a lot of people, again, the Link 1, limiting the Link 1 was very fucking hurting to this deck. Was the most hurting out of the entire ban list. You know, a lot of things got hit, but this was the most hurting out of everything that did get hit, is the Link 1 getting limited. I still think this deck can still do good. I feel like they'll find a way to keep competing with it, even with the Link 1 at 1. Because you remember, they still had the Link 1 at 1. Again, they can still do their end boards usually if they don't, if they give them crossouts coming out now, so they will have access to crossout. So if they opponent tries to Ash Blossom, their Link 1 play and stuff like that, they can just cross out, banish the Ash, and then continue their combo from there. So it's just basically, I feel like this deck can still do very good. It plays a shit ton of hand traps as well. It, of course, has one card starters because the Link 1 is still legal. It's limited, but it's not still not banned yet. But yeah, I still feel like this deck is going to be very good in this format. Not going to be as good as it used to be, but I feel like this deck will still see some competitive play and stuff like that. So yeah, this will be my number 5 for... Coming in at number 4 is Invoked Shaddoll. Now, this deck did not get hit on the ban list, which you can probably name a reason was Nadir Servant got reprinted and Schism got reprinted in the tins. So they didn't want to hit those cards because they were getting reprinted anyways. Now, this deck is very good if you verse a combo deck. You know, Winda still is very fucking powerful. But the reason why I'm not putting it at number 4 right now is because they have to rely on Winda. They can't really win the game in any other way. What happens if they verse another control deck? I don't know. Let's say Zombie Outreach. Let's say they verse Zombie Outreach. Winda does nothing. Like, sorry, they don't really special summon that. Like, they don't verse a deck that doesn't really special summon anymore. They're kind of, Winda does fucking absolute shit to them. That's really the case there. So I feel like this deck, I understand why they didn't hit it. But I really don't think they need a hit right now. I know Nadir Servant is very fucking powerful. Same thing with Schism. But I feel like this deck does not need to be hit. I know a lot of like combo players might get pissed because Winda does shut down their strategies. But again, they're playing like Droplet and Dark Ruler no more, which absolutely stops Winda and stuff like that. Same thing with like Imperm or something like that. But they usually wait until they there's something on the field before they get Winda and stuff like that. This card is very fucking... this deck is still very powerful. The Shaddolls have been powerful for a very long time. I think that's the reason why a lot of people want to see this deck hit is because... Not because like it's very powerful in a way. It's like it's good and it's been in the meta for a very long time. I think that's why a lot of people want to see it gone at this point. But I really don't think it needs to get hit in any way. This deck is very powerful. It's at number 4. Again, I think there are better decks than it up in the top 3. But this deck is still very powerful. And again, it's actually, I don't think it's even that much to actually play this deck. So it's, you know, a very budget friendly maybe. I don't know. I could be wrong about that if you go for the common variants and stuff like that. But yeah, that's my number 4. Enough about me rambling and stuff like that. Now let's get into number 3. Coming in at number 3 is Virtual. Now, a lot of people thought once VFD got hit that this deck would still be meta, and they are correct, but they weren't correct straight away because once VFD got hit, Virtual stopped seeing play. Then once the July ban list came out, Virtual then started seeing more play and started seeing more success, and now is my number 3 out of the top decks in the format. Now, this deck is very fucking good. Shen is a walking fucking macrocosmos for anything sent from the field to the graveyard is a macrocosmos, so that's very good in and of itself. They can set up Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which is something they usually can't make, thanks to Ultimate Tzolk'in, because the Tzolk'in can cheat out the Crystal Wing, and then they can pull out Money Mud Dragon, and then go into Invoked Caligula, which his effect says each player can only activate one effect per turn, which is also just very ridiculous. And then they have the Chuche on top of it. It's a very good board with Shen, Caligula, Crystal Wing, plus the Chuche in the back row as well. It's very, very powerful. I see why a lot of people... I thought this deck was a fluke at the beginning of the format, because when I started seeing tops and stuff, I was like, this ain't really going to be doing much. Maybe this was just a fluke. I was completely wrong. Virtual is still a very powerful deck. A budget-friendly deck as well. It's very cheap to get this deck, except for like maybe like the expensive cards like Droplet and stuff like that. But you can just play Dark Ruler no more, which is again way cheaper than Droplet is right now. Again, Virtual World number 3 is absolutely fucking amazing deck. I like where the deck has gone since VFD was banned. It's, you know, Caligula is basically like a VFD, I guess, but it's a lot easier to out because it doesn't, if you have like a 1900 beat stick, it can beat it over and attack and stuff like that. But yeah, the Virtual World is number 3 for me. Now let's get into our number 2. Coming in at number 2 is Drytron. Now, this deck did not get hit on the ban list. Now, some of you might be asking, no, they limited Ava. That did nothing. Absolutely nothing. A lot of the Drytron decks were already playing Ava at 1. So that limitation of Ava really did nothing. They can still get fairies into their hands and stuff like that. And they have found a combo where they get into M7 to recycle Ava. So, in all honesty, limiting Ava did fucking nothing. Now, if they banned Ava, maybe we'll have a different story on our hands, but they didn't ban Ava. This deck is still very powerful. They still have Ava at 1, which is enough, by the way. That is still enough to get enough negations into your hands and stuff like that. They have Diviner at 3. Ultimus is still fucking legal. Mu Beta is still legal as well. That card is ridiculous. Like, this whole deck is still fucking, it's unhit. A lot of people wanted to see the Verte engine somehow hit. That wasn't hit. So Drytron can still use the Verte Dragoon engine. A lot of people wanted to see Ava ban. That did not happen. It's limited and absolutely does nothing. This deck is still fucking powerful. It's up to a really great board, and if their board ends up getting Dark Ruler no more, Forbidden Droplet, usually they'll have 2 Orange Lights in hand, so they'd still have 2 negations to go off of. This deck is still fucking powerful as shit. I know that they limited Eva, and that's technically their hit. That did absolutely nothing. I'm sorry, that did absolutely nothing. The reason why it's at number 2, though, because it has a very problem of going second. It cannot go second to save its fucking life. Unless you draw, like, Droplet, that's the best case scenario for you going second. That's it. It can't really go second. That's the reason why it's number 2 and not number 1, because it has a hard time going second. So yeah, that is my number 2. Now, without further ado, let's get into my number 1. Coming in at number 1 is Tribegage. And now this is the one that pisses me off the most. Even though I was ranting about them limiting Ava did absolutely nothing and stuff like that, at least Konami directly hit the Drytrons. Ava at least was played in Drytron. You know, it was at least a direct hit and somewhat hurt the consistency with the deck. The thing with Tribegage, their 2 hits in this ban list was Zodiac Barrage and Tenki. Zodiac Barrage being banned, so what? Tribegage can take out the Zodiac engine and still be perfectly fine how it is. Number 2, I know Tenki is technically a direct hit to Tribegage, but guess what? They still have Fractal at 3. They still have Revolt at 3. They still have Nerval at 3. They still have Kit at 3. They still have Karas at 3. They play Rescue Cat at 3. Like, I'm sorry. Like, Tenki technically is a direct hit. But honestly, that doesn't do much when you have Fractal at 3 and you still have Revolt at 3. Because they can still end up getting into this really good board and have follow-up for the next turn. Like, I'm sorry, the direct hit they should have done was Revolt. And this pisses me off the most, is because Konami clearly sees that Tribegage is a problem. So they limit Tenki and they ban Barrage. They don't directly hit the deck. They'll just try to hit the deck to make sure the deck has a less consistency, but are still powerful enough where they get more cells and stuff like that. I don't know. I just feel like it's very, very dumb. This pisses me off the most because Konami clearly sees this is a problem deck, and they didn't really do anything about it. They banned fucking Barrage of all things. I'm sorry, Tribegage can take out Zodiac and be perfectly fine. I know I've said that before. But enough about me ranting about the Banlist. Tribegage is very powerful because, again, they have Fractal stuff like that, and they could Wing Beast in their graveyard. Banish, cheat out Link monsters and stuff like that. Add Revolt to hand. Revolt is at 3 still, so they can actually hard draw it as well. Revolt is very fucking powerful. Fractal, all the Tribegage is still very powerful to cheat out Link monsters. They have a good turn 1 setup to, have a good end board and stuff like that. And then turn 3, when it gets back to them, they have a good follow-up, getting to access Code Talker and stuff like that. Go forward OTK and stuff like that. That is my number one for Tri-Brigade. Even though I'm pissed off about it, it is number one in everyone's eyes, and I don't think anyone will argue that point. So yeah, that is the end of the video. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more content on the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.